All right, so welcome everyone. My name is Olivia McCuskey and I'm with the Education Alliance. Real quickly, the Alliance is a nonprofit that works with public K-12 schools in West Virginia, and we exist to mobilize business and community support for public schools. We are very passionate about helping all students build career awareness and be ready for future success. One of the ways we do that is by partnering with business and schools to bring this virtual work-based learning course to you. I'm very excited to welcome Nancy Ritter with the Marshall Aviation School. She is actually at Yeager Airport down in Charleston today. And she is going to be presenting to us about the aviation school, the opportunities they have there for future success. And then they're kind of going to do a professional soft skill training on, attention to detail at the end of the training. So very quickly, outline of today's module. Again, the first 10 to 15 minutes, we will learn about the aviation sector and the different careers and opportunities available to you at the Marshall Aviation School. And we will have some time for Q&A. And then following that, there'll be about 10 to 15 minutes where we will learn the skill of attention to detail and how that's important, not only if you're a pilot, but also just in your everyday life. And then the remaining 5 to 10 minutes, we will finish off with another round of Q&A. So with that, I will turn it over to Ms. Ritter.
Hey, good morning, Greenbrier. Very nice to meet you this morning. How y'all doing?
We're good.
Good. All right, so hopefully you can see the screen now. Just I have a lot of videos and a lot of different presentations today, so I'm going to wind up resharing about a million times during the presentation, so you might just have to give me a minute or so. I also have a really cracky voice today, so if that's going on and off, I don't know. I think it's some kind of allergies, but I'm very, very excited to meet y'all. I'm really happy to be here. My name is Nancy Ritter, and I am the director of the Division of Aviation, Bill No Flight School at Marshall University. So Marshall University has a Division of Aviation with 2 schools in it. The first one is the one that I'm at. So that's the Bill No Flight School. So Bill No is a very well-known name in the aviation industry. He's a really important man as far as corporate aviation goes. He's a Marshall graduate, and he was one of the key founders of this school. So that's the flight school. So here at this school, we teach flying. And then at the other school, which is located in Huntington at the airport, not at the main campus of Marshall, but at the airport, they teach AMT, or aircraft maintenance technician training. So we either teach how to fly them or how to fix them here. Again, my name's Nancy, and I am an airline transport pilot, which is the highest license you can get in flying. So it means what it says. So I can take a large airline type aircraft and fly a few hundred people at a time from one destination to the other. I've been flying for a little over 30 years now, and I have about 10,000 flight hours. So a long time in aviation. And I really wanted to start off today by saying we're going to learn a lot about aviation. And in this past year, so I'm new to West Virginia. I've only been here for a year. I can tell you I go to a lot of high schools, right? So I think I've probably been to 20 or 25 high schools just in my first year. And for sure, I'll be down at Greenbrier sometime within the next year. I hear from all kinds of students that say, flying an airplane, like, that's not me. I don't do that. I don't come from a family that does that. I've never heard of it before. I don't know somebody who's a pilot. And several times this year, I've heard from students when I tell them about the school, they say, well, I just can't do that. And I'm here to tell you that's the silliest thing I've ever heard. Everybody can do that. It's very, you need a lot of dedication to be a pilot or an aircraft mechanic. You need a lot of investment in it because it's expensive, but the return is tremendous. Like your salary is massive. And the feeling that you get from flying people or fixing the aircraft where people fly on is tremendous. So what are the kind of pilots that you can be when you're an airline transport pilot. Here's what we teach. So you could just be a pilot that likes to go to the airport on the weekend and maybe fly yourself or your family around. That's called a private pilot. And while some people like to do that, that's pretty much not why you would go to school here. If you were coming to this particular flight school, you'd want to be an airline transport pilot. And that can be several different kinds of flying. So obviously, this is an airliner, you know that one, right? You could also be a military pilot with the training that you get here. And you'll see in a minute, we're at Charleston Airport with a huge division of the Air National Guard that fly this aircraft. That's a C-130. And we have a pathway that leads graduates right to that particular Air National Guard as well. You could be a corporate pilot. That's my favorite airplane. That's a Citation 10. It's a mid-sized business jet that seats 11 people, and it's my favorite because I've flown it for so long. So that's a Textron product, and what that means is that you're flying either a few members of the company or a family or just a couple of VIPs around as they need. A lot of people, in fact, 2 of the people that are in the class right now want to be what's called bush pilots. And that means you're flying people and goods and services to very remote areas. You can see in this airplane, in this picture, the airplane actually has skis. That's in Alaska. And that aircraft is used to fly kids back and forth to school. So a lot like a school bus, only an airplane. You can also be an EMS type or a service division. In this case, a firefighter. That aircraft is dumping a load of fire retardant on a forest fire out in California. And then the newest kind here is an unmanned aircraft. So particularly in West Virginia, there is a tremendous growth in unmanned aircraft. In fact, the federal government has given tremendous funds for West Virginia to be the first state that develops what's called remote air mobility. And that means that there'll be an airway system and a command system that unmanned aircraft fly medical services and disaster relief all throughout the mountains of West Virginia. And once they figure out how that works, they'll deploy it to the rest of the states. So that's something that's going to happen in aviation right here in West Virginia first. So it's a super exciting thing to be involved in, right? And we, at this flight school, we're going to do a lot of the training for that unmanned aircraft. The other type of training that we do at Huntington is AMT, or Aircraft Maintenance Technician. That's a little bit shorter of a program, and we'll talk specifically about it later. However, you go directly out to work on large aircraft. So here you can see mechanics working on the actual blades of a jet engine fan. Here they're working on the computer systems that drive an aircraft. A modern aircraft usually has about between 40 and 50 computers that make sure it's staying within a bunch of safety parameters. You can work on the outside shell of the aircraft, and that's called the airframe. Again, the computer systems for the engine, or this crazy mess of computers here, which is called your avionics. And what that means is it's the system that drives the flight characteristics of the aircraft. So those are the 2 schools that we have here at Marshall University. Again, I'm in Charleston and the other one's in Huntington. For both cases, almost all of your training is done at the flight school, and you're not at a college environment, right? So a lot of times when you go to college, you think about going on main campus and going from building to building to do your studies. When you're involved in something like aviation, almost all of it takes place, obviously, at the airport, right? But almost all of your classes will also be online, right? So you can spend the most time either at the maintenance technician school or others. So.
And Ms. Ritter, I think we might pause and see if the students have any questions about both of these schools before. I know you're going to share some videos. Yep. Students, do you have any questions for Ms. Ritter thus far? If you do, you can feel free. I know you're already unmuted. Go ahead and speak up and let us know.
Yes, any questions?
Ms. Ritter, I have one. What is the, is there a shortage of, air maintenance technicians and pilots, or, what's the job opportunity looking like? Would you immediately get a position?
You would in both cases, right? So the aviation industry is very much like a cycle, like we're always behind. No, training pilots and training mechanics is expensive to work on this big technology. So we always find ourselves a little bit behind in that process. On top of it, during COVID, a lot of pilots retired, right? Nobody wanted to be in that space with a bunch of other people. And then, of course, nobody made pilots. Nobody went to school for pilots or technicians during that time. So Airbus and Boeing, which are two really large aircraft manufacturers, put out a study every year for the following 10 years. So the estimation worldwide is that we're 600,000 short of maintenance technicians in the next 10 years and 350,000 short of pilots for the next 15 years. So that's in addition to everything that we're already producing. So in both the schools, you have the opportunity to be employed either as a mechanic or a pilot before you ever graduate from college. So you can't get in at a better time right now. And I would say pretty confidently that's going to hold until about 2035. I think everybody's in agreement for at least that long. So that's well after you would get established in your career. So I think maybe it'll be a little bit different as we get to 2040 and things, but right now it's an awesome opportunity to get there. So we have sophomores here in our flight school right now who are already committed to a company and who already have agreed for a sign-on bonus as soon as they graduate with their degree. So not only will they have a job with a large jet when they leave here, but they will also, at the time they graduate, get a great big check for their sign-on fee. That will help pay down the cost of attending.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you.
And in the maintenance school, everybody in their first class was offered a job with Embraer, which is another really big airplane maker. So they hadn't even started school yet and they were offered a job. That's how much the industry needs people. So that's our vision, which is kind of a big vision, but it's pretty cool to be involved with. So our vision is to inspire excellence as the world's premier aviation training organization, positioning aspirant aviators for rewarding and fulfilling future by promoting exemplary aviation safety, exceptional customer service, and serving as notable stewards of our university and community. So as we talked about briefly, we have one school in Charleston and one school in Huntington. And actually, Mrs. McMahon has two handouts that if you'd like to learn more about either one of those schools, she can actually pass them on to you as well. So this is a picture of our hangar here in Charleston. We're a 4-year degree issuing program that takes students from zero time to FAA licensing and awards a Bachelor of Science at the end of that. So you're doing all of your flying and the flying counts towards your degree. We're in our 2nd year of operation. We have 6 airplanes in our current fleet, and we take 2 airplanes every year for the next 5 years. And we also start in this coming summer building our 2nd hangar. So the school is growing much faster than anybody thought that it would. So most of our students are typical just out of high school, starting college, but we also have a few other kinds of students here. So there's some students that already have a degree and already have a job and then are leaving that job because the aviation industry is getting so big right now. So we have nurses and police officers and EMS drivers and a school teacher even who are leaving. They already have all kinds of degrees, so they don't need a bachelor's, but what they need is the flying. They can also come here, so you can come here with or without it. And then we also have some people that are just local to the area that want to learn how to fly, and we want to make sure we serve the community as well. What's super cool about our program, it's the most technically advanced program available. So usually when you go to flight school or you go to AMT school, you get the oldest equipment possible, right? So it's kind of like going to driver's ed. Like nobody gives you a brand new car in driver's ed because they don't want to hurt the new car, right? So same with the airplane. Nobody gives you a brand new airplane because you know how rough everybody's going to be on it. But here that's absolutely upside down. So all of our training is delivered electronically. All of our aircraft are brand new. And this is the crazy part. The avionics or the navigation equipment that you'll see that's in our aircraft are actually more technically advanced than some of the aircraft that would fly you and your family on vacation, right? So because they're so new, they have the highest level of technology here. Same for the engines that they use over at the AMT school. So it's an awesome opportunity. All of your training that you get here, you have no books. It just comes on one iPad. So when you enroll here, you get the iPad, and everything in the building and in the aircraft and in the simulators are all Bluetooth capable. So as soon as you come in, you Bluetooth to the entire school, and all of your training is on what's called an EFB or electronic flight bag. And we're going to see that in a minute or so. So really, really super advanced. So this is the main kind of our aircraft that you first start on. And this is the half of the navigation system that you'll see later in our display of the simulators and in the airplane. And then this is the full screen with the entire pedestal in between them in the multi-engine aircraft. So smaller to larger aircraft. And what changes is the performance and how much technological equipment and computers are in the actual aircraft. So it's really highly technical and advanced. So who are our partners? Like what kind of jobs can you get? We talked a little bit about it. Right now we have 3 airline and regional air carriers. So if they fly in or out of Huntington or Charleston, you could get a job with them from graduating from our program. And that's really important because I talk to a lot of high school students that want to stay here. So the cool thing about being in aviation is you don't have to move to the job because you work with airplanes. So let's say Embraer is down in Florida, right? That big manufacturer. You can still live in West Virginia as long as you can hop the airplane to get to your job in Florida, right? So a lot of people live in West Virginia that work for Allegiant, that work for Spirit, that work for American and Delta, and their main base is here, and they commute to work, but instead of commuting in a car, they commute in the airplane. So it opens up a lot of opportunities, particularly to people that just aren't ready to move to another part of the country. Our customers, there's 69 students here right now in the first 2 years. The total when we're completely full in 5 years will be 350. We already have 55 people working for fall entrants who are either graduating as seniors right now or in the process of that. 91% of them are West Virginia natives, 13% are veterans who've come from the armed forces, 14% are women, and 14%, like we talked about, are coming from another profession. So everybody's in a different situation here. And that's the best part of it, because you're not all the same. You're learning from people who maybe have been out in their real jobs for 10 years, or maybe a student that's coming from high school in Florida. You can see down here on the bottom, we have a lot of different states that are involved in that. For the aviation maintenance technician, what you're learning over there is 3 very big categories. There's general, there's airframe, and there's power plant. So those are 3 licenses that you get while you're there. That's a 2-year degree. So you leave with an Associates of Science, and you can continue on if you want, but you'll get your licensing in the beginning so you can start working very fast, right? They work on regular small aircraft and jet engines. They work on engine computer systems, electronics, avionics, which is the navigation systems in the airplane, and aircraft painting, as well as new technologies. So they're working again on the newest type of aircraft available so that they can make sure that they're ready. And when they're out there, they can work on the highest standard aircraft. They only have 22 students because they just opened in October, right? So they only have one class. They have 7 people working there, and they have partnerships, as we talked about, with Embraer, Delta, and many others. So all of those 22 people have job offers right now.
Good morning, everybody. Let's take a tour of the Bill No Flight School. The first thing you'll notice is I go through a set of secure doors. These doors are actually a TSA checkpoint where you need a Department of Homeland Security badge to enter.
So that's the first thing you should know about aviation, either on both sides. There's a huge background check that you go through. So when you all go to the airport, you go through TSA, and they do all kinds of checks on your luggage and stuff. You get the checks to your background done before you ever get into a flight school, because this is our front door, right? And that's called the passenger side or the land side of the airport. What I'm going to show you now is our backyard. So this is our backyard. So we're completely out. There's a taxiway, there's the airline terminal, and there's a massive military base. So once you're out our back door, you are outside in the middle of a completely controlled area. So any job that you're going to get in aviation, whether or not it's flying them, fixing them, moving them, helping them, you have a really big background check to get through before you get on to the other side. And can you see that one, Ms. McCluskey? Great.
My name is Tarkin. My name is Tarkin Salvar. I'm a professor here at Marshall University. I teach the private pilot ground school and instrument ground school. I also am the director of safety. This here, the room that we're in, is the classroom. This is where all of your ground classes relating to the flight portion of the crew be held. Behind me here is a TV. All of our classrooms and really equipment here at the school is very highly technologically advanced. If students have questions regarding the content covered in class, they're connect iPads up to the screen, and it really allows the student to explain what they're seeing and what they're needing help with understanding. And as a professor, it's nice because having this technology can really benefit and makes providing instruction to use the student much easier and more streamlined.
So I want to take a look at this for a little bit. That's actually TVs that are projecting an iPad, right? So I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with Iron Man. Y'all know that series of films, right? And when he's in his basement, he throws his computer up to a circular device that's kind of transparent in the room. Here we throw our iPads back and forth from room to room. So if you have something that you're unsure of, in this case, it's a weather situation, right? So here is us, here's a bunch of restricted airspace right here, and here's the weather. So the question would be, how do I take off safely, not get into the restricted airspace and not get into the weather? So that's actually from a student flight iPad in another room. So the whole building can throw up to different screens everything that you might have a question about. So what Todd is doing is his full-time job is the director of safety here. So he's a pilot. He has about 5,000 hours. He's got a family. They all live here, and he's a professor with Marshall University at the same time. He probably spends about half his day out flying with students and the other half working our safety program. So many of you, of course, if you're in STEM type of programs, understand risk mitigation and the importance of safety management systems, whether it's an engineering or a science-based career. In this case, it's hypersensitive to safety because of how many people are in the back. So in aviation, particularly when you're talking about flying airplanes for hire, you're in a position of public trust. And that requires that you take every risk associated and mitigate it down as low as possible. So his job primarily is just to make sure that our operations are as safe as possible. And he doesn't intend to go to an airline. This is his full-time job right now with his family. So he's the director of safety.
Hi, I'm Nathaniel Ramsey. I'm
Got it?
assistant chief flight instructor here at the Bill No Flight School. I'm also an examiner here to do stage checks and stuff here. Today, we're going to show you the Nebraska Sim over here. This is a level D simulator. So basically, in layman's terms, it translates to really fancy sim. It takes 5 computers to run it. And in here, we can simulate the airplane on a one-to-one replica. So we can do up to 40% of your training in instrument in this sim without ever touching the airplane. There's not a whole lot of these around. It allows us to do a lot of really cool things in your training and simulate emergencies that you don't have to simulate in the real airplane. That way you're really familiar with it if you ever run across thing in real life.
So that's Nathaniel, and his career is assistant chief flight instructor. So his job, his full-time job, is just to make sure everybody's getting through school with the required FAA credentials. So his job is to represent the FAA here and make sure that everybody's in line to complete the licensing they've started. So that the device that he's in there is pretty cool, right? That's a Frasca simulator. And it's so accurate that, so the aircraft has a side stick, and when you want to rotate it, you just rotate your wrist. And say to rotate the airplane, it takes a half a pound of pressure for me to do that. It's so accurate in that simulator that it'll also take a half a pound of pressure to rotate that simulator in there. So for all of you involved in aerospace engineering or in simulation and looking for careers in that, that is directly what they use in simulation for training airplanes. And the reason that it's so important is because a lot of emergencies you probably wouldn't want to do in the air, right? Because it increases the risk again. We can train them all day and all night in this simulated device, and nobody is in risk of hurting themselves. So you come out a much more professional and confident pilot. None of it is required. You don't have to have any of it in order to be a pilot, but most schools who are serious about it have a simulator in there. And a very large portion of engineering right now is in simulation. So they next year will have VR IR goggles that are put on while you're in there, and it'll make the entire thing 3D rather than just 135 degrees of vision. So again, getting really, really technical about exactly what's happening in simulation. It's really, really exciting.
Hi, my name is Tyler Giano, and I'm an aviation maintenance technician here at the Marshall University Villanova Flight School. In that role, I am responsible for maintaining all of the aircraft that the students fly on here. In that role, I'm required to have a license in order to work on aircraft, not just these aircraft, but any aircraft in the United States. That's called an airframe and power plane license. And with that license, I work here doing scheduled maintenance. So we keep all our planes in tip-top shape, and then if anything happens while they're out there in the air and they come back, I'll fix their tires or change the oil or whatever it might be.
And that's the last job that we have here. So Tyler is an AMT, right? So he's an aircraft maintenance technician. He has all 3 of those licenses we spoke about earlier. And his full-time job is just taking care of the aircraft at our flight school. We have 3 of those guys who rotate around shifts to make sure whenever we're out with an airplane that somebody is there to take care of it as well. So those are the biggest of the careers that we have here. I don't know if there's any questions about a specific one that I can answer before we go into a quick discussion of attention to detail.
Sure. Yeah, that is a great, Ms. McMahon's class. Do y'all have any questions about anything you've seen?
Anybody have any questions? You're really quiet this morning.
That's okay.
No,
It's a Monday
It's
morning.
a Monday morning.
Students, I do have a question for you though. Can 1 or 2 people share with me what's the most exciting or surprising thing you've seen thus far with what Ms. Ritter has shown you about the flight school, or just about, you know, being a pilot or an AMT in general?
Okay. Winston said the technology and how impressive that is.
It is super cool, you know, when you're here and you're seeing like that you're actually have access to better technology than the airplane that flies me and my family to Florida, it makes you feel like really excited to be a part of it. And I think that's a really big difference why you should be trying to look for a flight school or AMT school that's new. The newest it can be, the best education you're going to get.
So right now, students, we're going to move into the professional skill training of attention to detail.
And I just want to talk about it a little bit before this starts. It's about a 2.5-minute video, but attention to detail starts with situational awareness. So you have to always know what's going on around you. And you have to understand the importance of doing the same thing at the same time in the same way all the time. So I know you're all familiar with the scientific method. You used it in science throughout your high school career. And they always made you do those steps the same way at the same time. And you're like, oh, can't I do this one in front of that one? Or why is this all so important? Attention to detail is probably 90% of what pilots and mechanics do. So hopefully this will
We talk here a lot about attention to detail. I know you do. You dualies hear it all the time. You guys are trying to train them. People told you the same thing. Most of the time you're going, why does this matter? You know, the fact that your socks are rolled a certain way isn't what matters. It's the fact that you pay attention to detail. These are my buddies. They're Mike Gould's buddies. Magoo is Mike McGuire. Mike McGuire died in an F-4 accident. Got a little distracted doing a nuclear bomb toss, rolled over. As he started to pull, he kind of drifted the nose low, watching the bomb probably, not paying attention. He hit the ground going real fast. The board decided that if he started to roll and pull 0.2 seconds earlier, he might have lived. 0.2.
I think the video stopped.
Yeah, it stopped for me too, Miss Ritter. Looks like Miss Ritter is.
I understood
there
why he
we
went
go.
lost wing, and they just realized later he flew almost straight ahead, probably looking up in the air for his flight because he couldn't hear him on the radio, and flew into the ground. In the investigation, they determined that his volume knob in his radio had been turned down. Probably when he bumped it with his glove, reaching for a switch nearby. Seems like such a little thing, doesn't it? John Vosberg was flying 22 feet low on a low-level route in Korea. He was certified to 100 feet. He was about 22 feet, didn't have a radar altimeter. Hard to tell 22 feet. Unfortunately, there was a new cable that had been strung at 78 feet above the ground. And when he turned into the sun, another minor mistake. And because the glare couldn't see it, it hit his OV-10 and it disintegrated in midair. Chico Lavelle was crouched on the front seat of his F-4 at Nellis Air Force Base, waiting to do a ground egress because they had a fire behind him. Somehow he and the backseater had gotten the terminology confused, and when one of them said get out, the other guy thought he meant bail out and ejected him. And he was decapitated by the canopy rail. Attention to detail. Is it important? You decide.
So that's the most dramatic reason why it's important to have attention to detail. And it isn't just pertinent for flying, it's pertinent in almost every career, right? How you do it, the order you do it, when you do it, all of that is critical to the success of what you're going to do. So I know we don't have time right now for the last portion of the exercise. However, I would like, if you could, to take a few minutes whenever you have today and write down everything you do on the way out to get to school. So what do you do in the order that you do to make sure you have what you need? Think about it. Have you ever really thought about it in that detail? And I would like you to turn it into Ms. McMahon.